So we go now for the keynote address, and this will be done by our sister Sandra Massiah, who is now a stranger to CTUSAB, to the labor movement in Barbados, to the Caribbean, I believe, to the world. She is Sub-Regional Secretary for the Caribbean, Public Services International, and I am sure that she has a lot to say to us this morning. So I want to welcome to the podium our sister Sandra Massiah.
Thank you, Brother Chair. And just as your president indicated, we've had the list of protocol done many times, and therefore I do also want to take it as given. Sisters and brothers, it's a pleasure to be here, not only in this conference room, but certainly to be home. When Brother DePisa contacted me about giving the feature address, and I noted the theme, I said to myself, boy, how you gonna do this thing? Because, you know, when you hear about feature address, it all prim and proper and everything. But I'm a trade unionist. Prim and proper, yes. But I also have to speak to people, you know, and I want you to speak to me. I'd like to provide some background information, some current information, and some future thoughts. I'm going to talk a bit about me. Why not? I'm going to talk a bit about Public Services International because I think it's important to understand the context in which I'm speaking to you. I want to give some perspectives, not only in terms of the Caribbean, but also the entire region of the Inter-Americas, Canada right through, and certainly my global experiences. I started out my trade union activism and then what became a career with the National Union of Public Workers when I worked in the public service here in Barbados. I worked with the Caribbean Export Promotion Corporation many, many years ago. In fact, I can actually say that my activism started at Cave Hill because I was in student politics then. I was the social sciences rep many, many years ago. And having joined the NUPW, I then became active as a shop steward, a trade union educator, and then went to work for the Commonwealth Trade Union Council as the coordinator for the Caribbean. I did that for about 7.5 years, had to take what I at the time called a stress break, and then started working with Public Services International. PSI is a global trade union federation. We have 30 million members throughout the world. We represent public services workers, those workers who deliver the services that many of us take for granted. In fact, the public services workers that saved the day when COVID came along. Let's be honest, public service workers help out even private sector. And therefore, we need to be very careful about how we view public services workers now and what we see as the future of public services. One of the things that we've been tackling within PSI revolves around the greed of the corporate world. And I'm not excluding Barbados from this. And what is happening is that profit is being put before people. That is why in our Congress, we will be having our Congress in October in Geneva, and I hope to see, if not at least one, maybe a couple from CTUSAB and its affiliates there, hint, hint. Our theme is, in a world of multiple crises, people before profit. And I don't want us to think, and I'm going to take that, the privilege of having had the experiences not only in the Caribbean but across the world. I want to take those experiences to tell you that the things you are experiencing in Barbados, the challenges, the headaches, you know, when you feel like cussing somebody and wonder why the hell you're doing these things to me. This is the anger that populations are feeling throughout the world. And it is that anger that is fueling a lot of the demonstrations and actions by workers, not only in public services, but workers as well in the private sector. In areas that we never thought we would have seen union membership soar, the Starbucks and the Amazons, who are joining unions, who are joining organizations that are tackling a lot of these issues and protesting the ways in which the corporate world has captured governments. Because that's the thing. We tend to always want to attack and think that governments are our enemies. Not necessarily so. Corporate world is actually now finding ways of capturing governments. And I'd like you to think about that and see if you see any parallels. I am not here in Barbados often, so many times I have to try and catch up with what's going on. Over the last few, maybe 2 months, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, I've been talking with our affiliates across the Caribbean in particular. And it seems that everybody is coming up with a theme that suggests there is introspection. Because I have interpreted your theme to be saying we need to look at ourselves to see how we get things done in this transformative age. There's one departure I would like to make from what I've been hearing before. That world out there is not to dictate to me how to behave and act. We're the ones to say what kind of digitalization we want. We're the ones to say what kind of world of work that we want. I'm not to be in a society in which a telecommunications giant or one of the 4 accounting firms, because those 4 are the ones that are telling governments and everybody else how to run things. That's not what we want. We recognize as trade unionists that things change. In fact, we have made a number of things change for the better. What we do want to ensure is that workers are involved, not just to get the document when you done write it, but to be involved in the fashioning of the document, the fashioning of the policy, as well as the monitoring and evaluation of that policy. So that's very important if we're talking about building and fortifying the Barbados labor movement. Vince Lombardi, I quote, "The achievements of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual," end of quote. I think it was a couple months ago, a really good colleague who has since passed, and I'm still trying to recover from it because he was always a great friend of the trade union movement from St. Lucia. made reference to Finley Dunn, who said that at occasions like this, the featured speaker is to bring comfort to the afflicted. I'm doing it different. I might actually be afflicting the comfortable. We have a lot of things to do. We seemingly don't have much time to do it in. And in some cases, we ain't got a clue what the hell it is we want to do. Last, and those in the room who were there remind me, I think it was last week in Trinidad and Tobago, there was the Caribbean Workers Forum, Caribbean World of Work Forum. There were some there from CTUSAB affiliates, but none from CTUSAB. But maybe they will report back to CTUSAB on the outcomes of that conference. But the theme was disruption, resilience, and solidarity. I took the role of disruption. Because I think we don't really promote the status quo in the trade union movement. We want to change it for the better. So we want to disrupt things for the better. And while there are many ways of doing it, some more pleasant than others, we nevertheless must talk about disruption. So that's one of the things I suggest, that if you want to talk about building and fortifying or strengthening the Barbados labor movement in this age of transformation, it means that we have to disrupt a few things. We have to make some of those who are comfortable uncomfortable. Because they may be comfortable because you're quiet. Many times I see the headlines on Barbados Today, because I have to keep up with what's going on. And then when I look, I don't see the responses from the labor movement. Why is that? In fact, I would suggest that in building and fortifying the movement, you have to use your foresight to talk about things even before they get on the headline. Because you have access, especially through PSI, to whom you're affiliated, to what is going on worldwide. We provide tons of information, tons of research. We try to involve you in that research. And while there have been some efforts to get involved with our two affiliates in this country, we don't see enough engagement. We can help you if you help us. And it means that the other 29 and 3/4 million people that we have as our affiliates can better understand the issues, and that's where the solidarity comes. That's how you build solidarity. It isn't just that saying, oh, I in solidarity with you, and you write it in a letter and, things will automatically become wonderful. You have to help us to help you. And you are, in terms of the Caribbean, one of 2 national centers that we have in PSI. Our other affiliate that is a national center, Confederation, is in Haiti, and that has its own challenges. But your challenges as a national center, and I've picked up what I hear from Brother Dennis, and I know he has repeated it on many times when we've sought to bring you closer to the ILO and its work, the whole issue about how CTUSAB is seen. Is it seen as a union? Is it seen as a national center? Is it seen as a bunch of people getting together and whatever? We view you as a national center, and therefore view as having a very important role to play. Because whether we like it or not, Barbados is in the midst of what is happening, not only in the Caribbean, but worldwide. And therefore, one would expect that the trade union movement in Barbados will also be in that area. You cannot have a situation, and sisters and brothers, forgive me. I'm trying very hard not to be too controversial, but it's real tough. Because I'm a Barbadian. I was born here. I grew up here. And there are things that you feel inside you. And I am hearing, I'm in groups globally where we are discussing things like the Bridgetown Initiative and what's happening with the climate crisis and the fact that our leadership nationally is making statements, but yet from the workers who will have to make these things happen, one is not hearing anything. And it bugs me. And perhaps someone who's here can tell me, why is it that you're not making the statements? Why aren't you presenting the views of your current and potential membership? That's what the people out there want from you, you know. They want to join unions because they do recognize the value. They do want an organization that can speak on their behalf. But they're looking and they're listening, and maybe, just maybe, you're not saying the things or doing the things that they want to hear or want to know that you are doing. So if you're talking seriously about building and fortifying the Barbados labor movement in a transformative age, how are you transforming yourselves? Issues like, what kind of public service do you want to see? I heard it was something about changing the ways of permanent secretaries. They're now going contract. There are countries in the Caribbean that well, at least one country in the Caribbean that tried that. It's a total disaster. Belize, the first to do it, where they're called CEOs, Chief Executive Officers. It's a total disaster. Why aren't you using those examples? You meet in terms of Caribbean, in the Caribbean sphere every year, and you hear the stories, you get the reports. Use those examples to guide you in framing your responses or your positions or your perspectives. As I said before, we in PSI put out a number of studies where we also get the information that you can choose from. Who's your membership? If you're building and fortifying the labor movement, who's your current membership? Is the media workers are still trade union members? You don't know? So if we don't know, what does that say? But we invite them all the time. We want them to tell our story, but sometimes they don't even know the name. They get the name wrong of the president. They get the name of the union wrong. And it's not their fault. Maybe it's ours. What about the doctors? Are the doctors members of the unions? When we see that health care is a critical area for the recovery. Everybody talking about recovery after COVID. But it seems as though it's only construction that can make us recover, or tourism. So who are we really targeting? And probably that's not the right word to use. Who are we really focusing on when we want to talk about building the movement, increasing our membership? So if you don't know who you're focusing on, where you're going, then how do you become strong? How do you become a voice to be reckoned with? Not suggesting by any means that everybody will automatically agree with you. But certainly one thing, and I'm speaking specifically now to the public services unions, which I think make up the bulk of CTUSAB'S membership, all your controlling things, you know. Act like it. No country can survive without public services, quality public services. Look what has happened to LIAT. LIAT is a public service. Everybody talked about it and criticized it. Now they're saying they want it back. So I want to also ask you a few questions. And don't get frightened by the paper. It's just enough notes. What is your vision of the future for your own union that you're representing here, but also for the country? What's your vision for Barbados? What's your vision for the Caribbean and indeed the world? One of the things I noted is that when a number of unions did their strategic plans, it's amazing, huh? Each union said it wanted to be the best public sector union in the Caribbean. So that means they were into a whole lot of rivalry. You have to push your vision wider than that. It's your vision of your country, of the kind of world that you want to live in. And when you have a clear idea of that vision, then you become stronger because people recognize, wait, these people really thinking, they know what they're doing. And people want to be associated with organizations like that. They want to play an active role. So what are you doing to realize the vision that you have? This whole thing about trade union education and training, I started, as I said, as a trade union educator. Trade union education and training is dear to my heart. Having worked with a number of unions to write manuals and documents and conduct training, I'm pausing because I wonder if we recognize the value of trade union education and training. And for an organization as well as like CTUSAB, you will need to rethink very clearly what kind of education and training you want to offer to your affiliates and their members. There's some in this room who are large enough to do their own education and training, but there are others, and I think that's the majority, that need some help. So that suggests that you have to work together. You have to work together to develop education and training programs that build the capacity of your current membership, as well as to build the interests of your potential membership. Your education and training activities need to be of such a quality that you can also educate the public about why you say what you say, why you do what you do. And therefore, how much are you going to invest in that education and training? How much are you going to invest in building the capacity not only to deliver the education and training that is provided by regional and international organizations, but also building the capacity of your own people to deliver that education and training? I get very annoyed when I hear trade unions organizing some trade union program on collective bargaining, and the person that they invite was never a trade union member. I mean, that can't work. Sorry. I'm sorry. That cannot work. You need to be developing your own educators within the movement. And in fact, I can recognize some faces in this room who will be able to help the unions do that. So maybe it's a time we get back to some basics. Because it was having attended, I think it was a shop steward's training at NUPW that a month after I started working, I became the shop steward. And I think that that's what we have to zone in on. Or membership, or rank and file membership. How are we building their capacities and their understanding? Because then is when you will have your public relations officers. Then you will have a viable communication system in your organizations. That means that there's communication not only among the membership, but also among the public and your potential membership. What research do you do? When I started at the NUPW, there was a research officer. I don't know if there's one now, but in this age when so many things happening, how do you present your arguments without evidence-based research? Is just go out there and, well, the value of our members' lived experiences cannot be measured. At the same time, you must conduct some kind of research that you document and you present. So if individual unions cannot fund each their own research officer, why not get together and have the Congress have research officer and a research assistant to help do the research? But if you don't do that, this whole talk about fortifying and building and all of that, a trade union movement, ain't making a sense. This thing about the leadership, up until the end of this session, Brother Edwin isn't the only person in the leadership of CTUSAB. It isn't only the executive board. It's all those people who chair committees and who provide guidance. And within your individual unions, it doesn't start and end with the president and the general secretary. It actually, in my view, includes your shop stewards. That's the leadership of your union too, because they exercise leadership every day in the workplace. So how are we treating with them? How are we making them the people who can speak for and deal with grievances and complaints, instead of every time a member has to run up to the union office, I want to see general secretary, when it could really be a matter that could be resolved at the workplace. You want to give your president, your general secretary, your staff, your officers, the time, the space to think and strategize. That's what you want. So that's another area that needs to be worked on, in my opinion. And I ain't gonna put no humble in front, in my opinion, my bold opinion, if you're talking about building and fortifying a labor movement. Because you're dealing with employers, and of course I include government in this area, who have a number of resources that they can call on. But you have a lot of resources too. The trade union movement, each union has the largest staff of any organization. Each and every member can play some very critical roles in the movement, in the union. Engage them. The members want to be engaged. They don't only want to hear from you when there's some confusion or some dispute, or when you decide to call a meeting. So how are you dealing with your leadership? Is your union, is CTUSAB, a learning organization? Would you describe yourselves as a learning organization? Because if you figure that the skills that got you to where you are now are the same skills that you will need to get further, you're wrong. You always have to be learning, and especially so as a trade union organization. Are your members committed? Do you have committed members in your unions? Nobody is shouting out, yes, of course. No, it's serious. When we have committed members, it changes the character of our organization. Because not only are they going to be critical, but they're also going to be providing alternatives and solutions. So how do we create those committed members? Again, through education and training, and making the linkages between what happens in your societies with the work of the union. Why is the union involved in talking about the climate crisis? And it's not because workers are going to be outside in the hot sun. That ain't the only reason. That's a simplistic way of looking at it. It is that we want a world that is peaceful, where people have decent work, where we respect each other. And the climate crisis is fueling the migration worldwide and in the Caribbean. Don't think that this is only an Italy thing and an Africa thing. It's happening in the Caribbean. Look what's happening in case of Venezuelan workers and Venezuelan population going to Trinidad, Tobago. Look what happened recently with the Haitians who went to Jamaica. One boatload got through, they sent back the second boatload. And that thing is then fueling hatred. So these are the reasons why we see them as issues as the trade union movement. Yes, of course, from the perspective of the workers, the workload, and please, 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 as it comes to my mind, it just flashed through my mind, please don't talk about burnout. Don't say that workers burn out. When you say so, you gain the employer excuse to get rid of them. Please don't say they burn out. Find some other language to use. And words matter. When, and I'm speaking particularly to, well, there's everybody in here, public services. Do you recognize that you help to shape public policy? When you are making your statements, whether it be at the social partnership, whether it be through your collective bargaining and general social dialogue, you are shaping what will become the standards in the country. So if we're talking about, let's talk about Convention 190, violence and harassment in the world of work. Barbados ratified the convention. What next? What all you're doing about that? So it's on the record books that Barbados is one of the, 20-something countries that ratified the convention. What are you doing about it in terms of helping all the young girls who walk in across the bridge and somebody, sits in at them? That's violence and harassment. What's happening when workers in certain places, whether it be at work, on the way to work, or from work, what are we putting in place that starts the process of eliminating that sort of violence and harassment? So it doesn't end by ratifying a convention or signing a collective agreement. It's the follow-up, it's the implementation. How are you tracking these? Is CTUSAB providing the reports to the ILO? Does CTUSAB get the reports that government send? Well, no, because I know that the Barbados government has not been sending many reports. That does not stop the trade union movement from sending its own reports. So when people know that you are doing these things, it does not come across that it's only for members. it comes across that you are working towards the betterment of the society as a whole. Yes, lots of efforts are made for your members because it's a membership organization, but your value extends beyond the dues paying membership. If you really want to fortify the trade union movement in Barbados in a transformative age. So let me wrap up here, because I think, I had a lot of things I want to say. My mother and father always ask me, well, you don't keep quiet sometimes. And I tell them, but I have a lot of things to say. So in that light, CTUSAB, Brother General Secretary, Brother President, and my sisters and brothers in the room, I'm putting on the table that PSI is planning to organize a 2-day training session in November, details to be worked out. But I think I would like to take this theme forward, not just only hearing the few things I have to say at this event, but let's actually start thinking through how we can actually build and fortify. And I hope that you will accept that offer, and we will start putting things in place to deal with it. So when we in PSI, because we also had to struggle as a global organization to deal with things that we never really thought would ever happen. We even have situations where we do have our rivalries in the trade union movement as well. So we also had to refashion ourselves, and I'm going to give you some of the things we did as an organization that helped us to get some successes and some wins. We made sure that we articulated a broad vision for the world, because we're a global organization. We make sure that we always assert the value and the necessity of universal access to quality public services. In other words, people didn't only know what we were against, they know what we are for. We conducted, we shared, we cooperated with organizations like Oxfam, Christian Aid, all throughout in carrying out analyses. We do it through research, and we make sure that the research is of the highest quality. We make sure that we implemented gender mainstreaming policies, and we develop and enhance our feminist agenda. So, for example, in PSI, we make sure that all of our committees, all of our working groups, all of our activities, training and otherwise, at least 50% representation by women. At least 30% representation by young workers. I see a few young faces in the room, but I'm quite sure. That's why I say I'm quite sure. I try to cover my bases. No, that's serious. And it isn't only in terms of the longevity of the movement, it's in terms of the people who are going to be affected by all of these things in this transformative age. Because there's some people who think that with digitalization and technology, everything will be all hunky-dory. But they will be working in more precarious work. That's what is being done through the technology by some employers. When we had COVID, COVID's still around, don't get me wrong. When we were in the height of COVID, and all these places introduced online ordering and delivery and thing. And then we had to, People then had to pay to get the things delivered. Who that extra money went to? Who did they employ more people to do the work? Because technology creates more work and you need more people, maybe in some different areas. But what's happening is that you're getting this precarious work. So you're getting all these young people to give them a smartphone, and half of them may realize they're being tracked by the smartphone and their pay is being docked because they can track when you stop, where you go, everything. Give you a little story. I like my little stories. My father worked at the Pine Hill Dairy years ago. He's now retired. He was a technician, air conditioning and refrigeration technician. And they wanted to give the workers cell phones. And I told my father, do not take it. The younger guys wanted it because they saw it as prestige. But what they didn't realize is that they would be on 24-hour duty. So we have to think things through about this technology, how it is used, and make sure that when we're talking about equality and equity issues, that it isn't just young people for the sake of young people, it's protecting their rights and looking after their health, both mental and physical health. Are you communicating your messages effectively, sincerely, and as wide as possible? And that goes to my earlier point about the media. Maybe it's time for CTUSAB to hold a workshop for the media about what its role is, how it thinks things through, how it does things, explain the terms and so on that are being used. We got reporters in the room? The Nation? Okay, I ain't going to say anymore. Are you building alliances? Who are you working with? Who are your allies? You can't agree on everything with everybody, but you will find there are some organizations with whom you can work and with whom you would have common positions. So if you do want to make those changes in terms of building and fortifying, you do have to build alliances. And those alliances don't necessarily have to be only in Barbados. They can be across the Caribbean. You need to use the technology effectively. And you yourselves have to be transformational. I want to conclude with an African proverb that I found recently. Every morning in Africa, an antelope wakes up. It knows it must outrun the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the slowest antelope or it will starve. It doesn't matter whether you're the lion or the antelope. When the sun comes up, you better be running. End of quote. Thank you very much.